Hi everyone, it's Liam here from Rating the Races. So, what an eventful day of racing we had today. Eventful in for many reasons. There were some impressive performances, there were some complete blowouts, there were some really interesting rides, there were some great rides, and there were some shocking rides. So let's go through some of those and try and pick out the bones of who is interesting going forward. Starting off in the beginner's chase, the Fairy House over 2 mile 5. Now, Impere Pass won that. Over 2 mile 5, he's not going to be running in an Arkle. I can't believe that they'll be dropping him back for an Arkle. They'll be going probably up in trip, if anything, for the Brown Advisory. But he's not the horse that I was that interested in this race. I tweeted just during the race. The horse I was watching was Staffordshire Knot. I've got this horse for handicaps over fences. I think there is something in this horse, and I think they're probably planning something. And, you know, it's not a surprise that they took on such a big name in Impere Pass, because they knew they could get this horse through the race without having to do a lot, quietly ride it, and, you know, end up getting some good experience over fences without actually getting involved. Now, some of his form actually last season was pretty good, including his second at Aintree behind Brighter Days Ahead. That looks pretty good form. Then did get well beaten in a Grade 1 behind the likes of Ballyburn and Jatara, Predator's Gold. It didn't work that day and he pulled up. Over fences, I think they've been waiting for this horse to go over fences, and he jumped okay. I thought he was a little bit sticky early on. I think he's going to be a nice horse over further. But I imagine that they'll be looking at the handicap route with this horse. And that 2.5 mile novice handicap chase at the Cheltenham Festival could well be where they're targeting this horse. So just keep an eye on Staffordshire Knot going forward. I think he's better than what he showed today even. And he's definitely one that I'm interested in going forward. Moving on to the 11:53. Do you know what? James Owen, I think it was, said we might have a better horse than, who was it? The one of their previous winners at home. Lavender Hill Mob is the one that they suggested, and they probably put a few people away here in the fact that he probably might not have been ready for today. He got beat at 2-7. I mean, easy money laying that horse, wasn't it, for the connections if they knew that you know, he wasn't ready. Having said all of that, I've got this horse down now for the Boodles. For the Boodles handicap hurdle. That they won't have got that deliberately wrong, that far wrong anyway. He won't be winning a Triumph hurdle. But if you've been beaten on him here, just keep an eye out for him if he ends up in that Boodles juvenile hurdle. The handicap, not the graded race. Just keep an eye out for Lavender Hill Mob. He ran okay. He jumped a few sticky. He ran on towards the finish. Bearing in mind he had been running over 1 mile and 6. It may be that the 2 mile, it was even a bit short for him. Maybe he wants a little bit further than that. And yeah, maybe a strongly run affair, bigger field would have allowed him to run his truer race. And that could well be what he finds in the Boodles juvenile handicap hurdle at Cheltenham Festival. Moving on, 12:07, Mares Novices Hurdle, Jubilee Alpha. She'll be winning essentially, she'll definitely be winning a novice hurdle soon. Can she win a listed class race? Absolutely. This was her first run over hurdles. Listen to Your Heart had already had the 2. The runner-up had already had the 1 in Rulabula. The fourth horse, Val Cadena, had already had one. This was her first effort over hurdles. She wasn't given the best of rides. It was quite a gentle ride. She ran on strongly. She'll definitely improve for the run. She'll be back into novice company, I imagine, next time. But I think she's a decent mare. That's Jubilee Alpha. Now we're on to some handicappers that I think are very interesting going forward. And the first one is Lemilos, who I thought was actually given a very good ride, considering this trip, for me, is on the short side. I don't think this was the right trip. And I think he was a little bit outpaced, particularly on this ground, the good to soft ground. Probably would have wanted it a bit softer to bring his stamina into play. He wasn't able to, but he tried to go forward, make the running, set a good pace, and just lacked for a bit of pace late on. You've got to remember, this horse has been over the national fences in the Grand National. They thought it would stay 4 mile 2. So although Dan's recently come out and said we think 2 mile 6 is the ideal trip, I don't think it is. I think the ideal trip is 3 miles 2. Where could they go? Well, when he was winning a Coral Gold Cup, formerly known as the Hennessy, he was running off 146. Last season, he ended up running off 142 in the Pertemps final, and he went off 6-1 for the Pertemps final. Now, he probably went off 6-1 for the Pertemps final, despite being a chaser. He's now rated 144 over fences. If the handicapper drops him another couple of pounds, bearing in mind he's been beaten 26 lengths, I think he'll end up in the Old Teamer at the end of the season. And he might turn up for the Old Teamer over fences really well handicapped. They felt he was really well handicapped off 142, and they thought he had a chance in the Pertemps over hurdles as a chaser. He's a much better chaser than he is hurdler. Yeah, I really think that's the perfect race for him. When he came to Cheltenham in October, I thought he ran a really good race, finishing 5th, when clearly needing the run. He's dropped in the handicap, Senior Chief's gone up, Broadway Boy has done well since, finishing 2nd in the Coral Gold Cup, or the Hennessy today. Does he know we'll probably win another race soon? Probably back at Doncaster, maybe even like the Grinthorpe. He will frank that form. I think that form will work out well, and Lamilos can demonstrate by being really carefully handicapped for the Old Teamer as one to keep an eye on. So I'm quite keen on Lamilos for the Old Teamer, and let's put that in. Work back from the Old Teamer. I'm very, very interested in his handicap mark next week. What the handicapper decides to do with him. My computer's just been a bit slow, that's why it didn't allow me to click update. So keep an eye out for Lamilos' new handicap mark. On to the 12:45, another one that we're definitely going to be looking at his handicap mark. And what are they doing? Uncle Phil was not trying at Fairyhouse. He made all of the running last season at Fairyhouse when winning a decent handicap chase, beating some decent horses, Saint Ouen and Let's Be Clear About It, Lucid Dreams. Really good performance, making all the running. He's come out at Ascot, held up out the back at Ascot this season. He's gone back to Fairyhouse over the same course and distance as when a comfortable winner, held up again. Never involved, never put in the race, never really asked. Horses were kicking away from him in front, and Paul Townend is just sitting on him, gently riding him. That was a very poor ride, or a very good ride with the future in mind. It would not surprise me if their plan was to come back in a few months for that race that they'd won previously. And when he runs then from the front, they'll go, oh, that was the reason he bounced back to form. He's going to drop from his 147. I imagine he'll be 145 after. 145, he won the race a lot. The Dan and Joan Memorial off 139. Could he win it off 145? Absolutely. He's not been involved in either of the first 2 races, and he's not been put in the race at all. So he's one that you definitely want to add to your Nagme. Let's put him in. When will he be trying? Potentially Jen back at Fairyhouse. So he's in on Nagme. Moving on, the 103. The horse to put into your Nagme here, for me, is Zandabad. Got to remember that Skyjack Hijack is a nice horse. And I made a tweet earlier today, and it got jumped on a little bit. Now, he's not been beating anything, Skyjack Hijack, but he's been winning races, and it's fantastic placement. Don't get me wrong, I think the placement of this horse has been exceptional, but he's not been beating classy horses. And today I don't actually think he beat a lot. In the 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th weren't good enough, and the 2nd was ridden like, do we get the trip? Let's see if we do before going back handicapping. They did get the trip. He'll be back in a handicap next time, and he'll be back in a handicap off potentially a very low mark. Skyjack Hijack was running off 132. He'll probably go up another few for that. He'll go up to 135. Zanderbad was running here off an effective mark of 117. When he returns for a handicap, I think he's going to be very interesting. He's got some decent handicap form when he was running over hurdles. His second to Affordil, that was a good effort in the Scottish County Hurdle. That's where I think they'll probably be coming back for. Off a mark of 117, I think they'll take all of the beating this year. They didn't get it right last year, in that they left it too late. They can go a bit faster this time, or maybe even the Hogmanay Hurdle. They could come back for the Hogmanay Hurdle, which is over 2.5 at Musselburgh. Keep an eye out for Zanderbad. Wherever he goes in a handicap, looks very workable, and I've already put him in. Moving on, the 115, the New Lion, very, very impressive performance. And I actually think he beat some nice horses. I think French Ship and Califat en Vol are good horses. I think that was a very satisfactory performance, or a good performance from the New Lion. He'll surely be off for the Challow Hurdle next. And yeah, I think he could be very, very smart. 120 at Fairyhouse. A Dream to Share jumped atrociously, but still finished 5th. Didn't get the clearest of runs. Lots of argy-bargy in that race. He'll be winning a novice hurdle soon. But the horse that I think is interesting is Don't Stop the Music. Wait for that in a handicap. They've obviously got a good record in handicaps, these owners. They've had a couple go well before, such as Fast or Slow at the Cheltenham Festival. They also had Lark in the Morning last year, win the Boodles. This horse, interestingly, you look at his form and you go, what did he do last time? Well, he was winning a bumper, and the time before that he was second in a bumper. So you're like, okay, he's been in bumpers. The time before that he actually ran over hurdles. So this was already his second run over hurdles. He's quietly finished 8th and 3rd. They'll keep finding big names to run against, and then turn up at the Cheltenham Festival in a handicap, probably something like the Martin Pipe. And I think Don't Stop the Music could be better than what he's showing so far. This was a very good performance. I think it was a good race. I think it's a race that will work out quite nicely. And he's definitely one I'm interested in for handicaps down the line. That's Don't Stop the Music. 135, the 3 mile 5, or just shy of 3 mile 6 at Newcastle. Keep an eye out for Gem in M when he goes up again in trip and is in a race that it's worth going for. I think there's the Edinburgh National could be interesting for him. The race at Kelso, the 4 miler at Kelso, could also be interesting. I don't think they're the same race. Gem in M will, I think, be able to keep up over a bit further. And I think he just got beat by the way I liked where Your Thinking ran as well from the front. It just got Gem in M off the bridle and out of his comfort zone. I don't think he'll always find that happening over these long distance races. So he's one I think could be interesting. 155 at Fairyhouse. Very impressive performance from Amsterdam, wasn't it? I mean, does Willie Mullins have another hurdler here? And do these colours have another hurdler? They've already got Amsterdam, or that they could now have Amsterdam. They've already got Sagino. They've already got Stateman. What do you do with them? Do you know what I'd like to see them do? I'd love to see them go with Amsterdam, considering he's come from France, start running him over fences. He could be very interesting as a 4-year-old turning 5 over fences. That's Amsterdam. I think he's beaten the right horses here in Carla Conti and Dodge Along. 210 at Newcastle. Now, this is an interesting one. Sagino was very, very impressive. Do not get me wrong. He was very impressive, beating Lump Sum, Kievar, tell her the name. Mystical Powers ran no sort of race here. That is not Mystical Powers form. Clearly something was wrong. So this is the time, in my opinion, that if you want to back Mystical Power for the Champion Hurdle, this is the time you back Mystical Power for the Champion Hurdle. Particularly as an each way bet. I actually think it's quite a good each way bet now. Drifted out to 25 to 1. Bearing in mind the horse had been winning everything else. The only time it got beat was at Cheltenham. In the Supreme, it still finished second. Only caught late on. In a race that it didn't get to use its speed. It got slogged out of it by Slade Still. That was not its running. And with that in mind, like, there's no reason for them to change tack with Mystical Power. He's clearly going to come back in and they'll go, yeah, he wasn't right, he was lame, this didn't work, we hated the ground. There's going to be an excuse. And the price that he's been pushed out to is ridiculous for the Champion Hurdle. I think if you've backed him already, you'll be disappointed. If you haven't backed him, but you were thinking about backing him, I'd almost be keeping an eye out where he next runs. If they stick to this champion hurdle route, you know, and they end up running him in a grade 1 next time at Leopardstown or Fairyhouse over 2 mile, I'd be thinking about backing him just before that, each way for the champion hurdle. Okay, if he then gets beat in that, you'll probably be going, yeah, he's not going to win the champion hurdle. Would not surprise me if he bounced back next time, though. He's already won multiple grade 1s. He's finished second at the Cheltenham Festival. He's got everything you want in a champion hurdler. Just a one poor showing today. Horses can bounce back. Moving on to the 225 at Newbury, the intermediate hurdle. I think this will work out really well. The horses to take out the race for me are the 2 Nicky Henderson horses. Jericho de Repenay, what was that as a ride? I think this was to make sure he got round and, you know, kind of enjoyed it a little bit. And we'd learnt, you know, he will go round nicely. Dropped out the back. It looked like I thought he was going to be pulled up. I really did. I thought he was going to pull him up. But he didn't, and then probably gave him far too much to do. He finished 5th. What could they do with him? Well, he's quite high. What is his current rating? Let's have a look. He's currently rated 135. I mean, that's not beyond him at all. There's a 2.5 mile handicap hurdle for him as soon as he wants to be ridden to try and win it. This, for me, was to get him round and make sure he completed the race. And the second horse that I want to keep in my Nagme is Aston Martini. Clearly didn't have the pace for 2 mile. Could this have been dropped in trip on the basis that we've got a nicely handicapped horse, we just need to get some experience and some runs into him? What's he now had over hurdles? He's had 4. This was his 5th run over hurdles. When he goes back up in trip, I think it'll be very interesting again. Maybe they're looking after his mark with something like the Martin Pipe in mind. I think I've already put that for Master Martini. Let's just add that. Martin Pipe. Maybe Jericho de Repenay is going to be aimed at the Coral Cup. So let's put him in 2.5 handicap. Coral Cup? Question mark. Not emojis, question mark. Question mark. Moving on, a few more to go. The 3 o'clock, the Coral Gold Cup. The 2 to take out this race for me were Victorino. Looked to give the horse a bit much to do. Where could they go? Classic Chase. He'll love the step up in trip. He'll love the soft ground that they likely get at Warwick. And I thought if he'd been a little bit closer, he would have won this. He was full of running at the finish. Classic Chase for Victorino for sure. And the second one that I'm very keen on going forward, Gallier de la Toe has run a really good race, considering the ground was probably too quick. Welsh National. Definitely a big chance in the Welsh National for Gallier de la Toe, who really will appreciate that soft conditions. Ran well for a long way when being quite positively ridden. We keep going. Gutted with the changing man. How many times have we backed Frero Bamboo and we get beat by it? We got outstayed by it as well. That was really frustrating. Frero Bamboo was well handicapped. We know that. We've been highlighting that as being well handicapped for a little while. I didn't think it stayed this trip. I thought the changing man came there, looked like he was going to win, made a bit of a mess of the last 2. Otherwise, I think he would have won. Wouldn't give up on those. And also some scope for the Grimthorpe. I thought that was a much better performance this time, considering after his last time out at Cheltenham. I think they're probably working back from the Grimthorpe with some scope, because I don't think they've got a lot to go for. They can't be aiming him at too many races because he's not going to be good enough. But something like the Grimthorpe, he would be good enough for. And finally, the last horse I want to highlight again is Petit Tonnerre, who's surely being aimed at the 2.5 novice handicap chase at Cheltenham. Didn't have the pace to go with him. Ran on quite quietly again. And if you watch it from the overhead shot, he's running on under quite gentle riding from... Who was riding today? John Joe O'Neill. He's full of running at the end. He just needs further. Let's put him in 2.5 mile over fences. Clearly ridden with future in mind. Handicaps are his bag. So they are a few horses to keep an eye out for. Let's just have a quick look at some of those markets. Welsh National, I've mentioned Gaillard de la Toe. They've drifted out to 20s. I think that's good. I'd be happy at 20s for Gaillard de la Toe. She'll get the softer conditions and she'll really appreciate that. Scottish National, they have introduced Victorino at 14s. That's a little bit early yet. I'll be waiting to see him in the Classic Chase. The Ultima. Who did I like for the Ultima? Lemilos. What have they opened? 25s. That's a big price for Lemilos. As soon as others start giving prices, that could be very interesting for Lemilos. Champion Hurdle. As I said, I think Mystical Power is too big now at 25 to 1. Wait to see where they go next time. If he's in a race that is a Champion Hurdle trial, essentially, then I'll be backing him each way for the Champion Hurdle. Coral Cup. Nothing there. Jericho de Repene is the one I'm kind of looking out for there. And the Martin Pipe. Again, nothing there. It's Aston Martin that I'll be looking out for in that race. So there's a few horses to keep an eye out from today's racing. Definitely think it was an informative day today. And there's going to be lots of future winners from the races.